Hi, welcome back to moveSKILL. A lot of our movements are aimed at developing strong, stable shoulder blades, strong, stable scapula, being able to put your shoulder blades into a deliberate position and hold them there under a load. A big example of this is the handstand progression, and where we start with a handstand progression is a series of movements based off or leading up to a wall handstand hold. The wall handstand hold and the movements leading up to this, we're not really concerned yet with actually doing a handstand. There's no element of balance in here yet. What we are trying to do is develop the awareness to stabilize, set your trunk, set your neutral spine, and even kind of a hollow position, and get very stable and strong about that. And at the same time, pull, actively flex your shoulders into what we call open, meaning your humerus and your trunk are in a straight line without any dumping into the low back, which is a very common fault here. So we're going to show you now a series of moves, a series of positions that lead up through this wall handstand hold progression. So the first position, the most basic position, is based off, it looks a lot like a yoga downward facing dog move. We're not trying to do yoga, so don't get too hung up on that. What we're trying to do here is start to open the shoulders and line up hips, shoulders, and wrists. And in fact, I'm going to use a stick here to demonstrate. Watch how Zach gets into position here. He's pushing his body up and back, or what it feels like is he's just pressing his arms straight overhead, right? His trunk is at an angle. So what you'll see here is his wrists, his shoulders, and his hips are in as straight a line as he can manage. We don't care about hamstrings for this, so bend your knees if you need to. A lot of times if you have tight hamstrings, this will be a little hard to get lined up. Watch out for this. Zach's going to overdo it. He's pushing too hard on his shoulders, and he's actually in a bit of a bowed position there. That's not what we want. Straight. That's what we want. Nice and active. Press your body up is a little bit of a weird cue in this case because it's up and back, but nice straight line from the hands, through the shoulders, up through the hips. So this is the most basic position. The key to getting something out of this is to be very, very active. Press your hands into the floor hard. Extend your shoulders. Elevate and squeeze your shoulder blades together as much as it takes to come straight. Again, don't overdo that, but really actively press into the ground. So the next version, the next most difficult version, is on a box. So all we're doing here is elevating the feet. And you can start with a low box and work your way up. We can end up with a pretty high box. Same exact idea. Bend the knees. We don't care about hamstrings for this drill. You're trying to get yourself as lined up here as you can. And again, press yourself up actively. What happens by rotating the feet up a little bit higher, we're getting more of your body weight onto your hands. And that's the theme we're going to continue with in the next step. So continuing this progression, we're now going to move off of the wall and, off the box, feet off the box and feet up onto a wall now. So what you want to do is line up your hands not too far from the wall. We're going to end up using you'll end up using your legs to press and control your hip position. So if you're way out here, then your legs are too short, right? So place your hands some kind of moderate distance from the wall here. I like to get to where my butt is almost touching the wall. Place your feet no higher than this. You're not trying to reach up the wall. We're not doing a handstand yet. That's too far. And it leads to that sloppy position. So feet in just a nice kind of little compact tuck. And again, like the box versions, you just don't care now what your legs are doing. They're just giving a little bit of support on the wall. And what you're doing here is pressing, again, through your hands. Press hard, up through your shoulders, up through your hips. And notice this nice vertical alignment. Zach is stacked up nicely here. If he was leaning, go ahead and tuck your knees a little more. We want to stay away from this right now. See here he's leaning on the wall too much. His whole body's at an angle. Part of what's going on is you're developing a sense of vertical stacking here. And just spending a lot of time on your hands in an active position, developing that shoulder, both strength and stamina. Okay, the next step is to elongate your position, walk the legs out straight, and notice where his hands are. Start far out, come back out a little bit. Start at a little bit of an angle here. This is actually a really nice intermediate position. Zach's gonna squeeze his quads tight now, squeeze his butt tight. Go ahead and walk your toes up just a little bit more and drag your hips toward the wall. His body is now straight. This straight line is extended from the wrists through the shoulders, through the hips, and now on up through the feet. But it's hard to hold that position because of that angle. You end up with a lot of torque on your shoulders. How'd that feel?
That's so good.
It's putting a lot of torque on your shoulders. For those folks who have a hard time, if you have a hard time getting your shoulders fully extended, this angled position is a nice, well, nice is the wrong word. It hurts and it's hard, but it's a very effective position. It puts a lot of pressure on your shoulders and helps you develop a lot of strength. So now to the real wall handstand hold. Finally, we'll work our way up to this, which Zach is going to start the same way. He's leaning over his hands here and getting a nice active support before he even starts to walk up the wall. And then he's just walking back as far as he can, now using the wall as a vertical alignment tool to help him really fine-tune and perfect his trunk midline and develop this nice straight vertical stacking now all the way up. The goal here is to get your hands as close to the wall as you can and then have nothing touching the wall except maybe the tip of your nose just barely brushing the wall and your toes, and that's it. And you maintain this not touching the wall in the middle by holding a very tight, strong, hollow body. Your abs have to be squeezed hard. So you end up in this position. It's actually very taxing to be here. Your quads are flexed hard. Your glutes are squeezed hard. Your abs are squeezed hard. It's hard to breathe right. Your shoulders are both elevated and retracted. You're pressing into the ground hard. It's an extremely active hold all the way up to your feet. So let's look at some points of performance, elements that we want to see, the elements that you really need to focus on developing. As Zach, go ahead and get into position. The body position here is pretty important, like sagging. Go ahead and just sag on the wall. Notice what happened. The legs went slack, his belly went slack, he's just kind of sagging on the wall, and his shoulder angle opened up a little bit too. This is not good enough. This is a waste of your time. Press yourself up, squeeze your abs tight, squeeze your butt tight, squeeze your quads tight. Check it out, his toes are pointed. His body is very, very rigid and tight, and this is what you're after. When you're holding these positions, you want to leave enough gas in the tank so that you can come down without a face plant or a disaster, right? You need to be able to climb down with a bit of grace, right? Word to the wise on that one. Another big problem that we see is failure to properly engage the arms. Arms need to be pushed straight and shoulders extended, in this case elevated. And if your shoulders start to fail, one of the first things we'll see is out here at the elbow softens. That's a problem. So in position, go ahead and hop back up there, please. A little bit, if this gets tired and you'll start finding it's very hard to keep your elbows, check out that little bit of softening in the elbow. That's not good either. Come on down if you need to. Break your sets up a little bit. Do what you need to. Maybe shorter sets, or maybe you're done for the day, but don't practice with this kind of inadequate engagement through the arms and shoulders. A related note there is width of stance. What we're trying for, what you want, what we're working toward is a shoulder width hand placement, shoulder width. For a lot of folks that's tough in the beginning, and you can't both get your hands in shoulder width and also get your shoulders through properly. So it is acceptable, at least in the beginning, to come wider than shoulders. Do the minimum that's necessary. If you need to come a little bit wider so that you can extend, go ahead. But understand that that's a temporary, it's a band-aid, and you're working your hands back toward shoulder width as quickly as you can. What did I forget?
Kick up.
A big one. You may decide that it's much more expedient to just turn around and kick up against the wall. Don't do this. Let me show you why. It's fine, right? Nice extended shoulders? No, it's a disaster. He's lost his midline stability. You almost have to lose your midline stability because of reaching toward the wall with your feet. It's an arch position that does nothing to teach you how to engage and keep yourself vertically aligned. Understand something, we're not trying right now to develop a handstand yet. What we're doing is developing conditions so that you can do a handstand later. Right now those conditions mean very aggressive, solid, hollow body engagement through the trunk, midline stability, and a nice, active, open, engaged shoulder. And to do this, you really need to face the wall, climb up against the wall.
And I would argue that you should be coming down because your midline, like your abdominal wall and your butt is tired, not because your shoulders are tired. That's how active you should be.
It's a good point. If you're doing this right, it's hard to breathe. You're going to be really tight and having to shallow breathe, and that's exhausting even just standing here demoing that. If you're squeezing your glutes, squeezing your abs, squeezing your quads, maintaining the proper body tension, it's really tough to do. And as a rule, that's the thing that fails first. And like Zach just said, when you feel this fail, you're no longer doing yourself any good. Come on down. So this is we've laid out some steps here to bring you toward the end of this progression, which is a very active wall handstand hold, which we're going to ask you to hold for periods up to a minute. Eventually you want to be able to hold up to even 5 minutes. 5 minutes, and at that point you've got a really solid command of both the position, you've got the strength, you've got the stamina. Along the way though, you have to manage this according. We may ask for a wall handstand hold in a workout. You need to use the variation that we showed that you can control, right? It might start off at that downward facing dog looking version. It may be a feet up on a box, maybe feet up on the wall in a pike. You want to really own this midline stability and active shoulder position and build as you can. So use this, and thank you.